Hello, and welcome to the Herald's Horn. On this episode, we are going to be talking about events a whole lot. We have some sick new events that were announced, such as 2 new Spotlight Series events. We also have the next regional championship sneaking up on us. We talk about that a little bit. We have some new changes to talk about for the 2025 new year for the show. What's going to happen? Who knows? Of course, we have the news. We have the product watch. And then after the break, I'm joined by the one and only Saffron Olive. I sat down intending to talk to him kind of about the proliferation of budget content and what I would call a unique blend of like casual and competitive content that he did a lot of work in pioneering like a decade ago now. Of course, we ended up talking about a little bit about that and then a lot of other stuff too. So it's a great episode. I'm sure that you will love it. I would love to take a second to remind you of the Herald's Horn Patreon. For as low as $5 a month, you can help support me and help support the show. We have a really fun Discord where we're chatting about stuff all of the time. And of course, we also have Patreon exclusive content, including bonus questions from the guests, any kind of fun, silly stuff that doesn't make it into the final episode. I try my best to throw it up in there. And coming soon in 2025, we are going to have more exclusive interviews on there. I am personally aiming for one a month, but we'll see how the year goes. Thank you so much for listening, and here is the rest of the episode. Hello! It's time for the Herald's Horn, part of the One Shot Network. My name is Cal Jones, and today I am joined by the wonderful Dan. Say hello, Dan.
I regret to inform everyone that in the script it says I'm going to say butts, so that's what I did.
I did not write that.
Nah, I wrote that, actually.
Are you going to say butts?
I did. I just did it.
Oh, okay. Yep, you're here in a wonderfully hot pink shirt.
Thank you.
I will be using color correction to make it appear even more blindingly pink than it already is. Is that your own t-shirt?
Yes, it is the Mononon logo.
The Mononon logo. Dan and I here every single week, all the time. We have the honor today of being joined by the one and only third co-host of the show. It's Lexi. What is up, Lexi?
Oh my gosh! I'm here. I exist. Oh my god.
You've made it. Well, Lexi, look, I said, hey.
The little hand wave to be confined within the camera space was perfect. Very, very good. Excellent podcaster.
Well, Lexi, here's the kicker. What a lot of people don't know. People have asked me, where's Lexi? The kicker is he's just not that much into magic as of late. You know, hobbies come and go. You're a very busy individual. But, you know, you were able to make it today, and I'm sure you cannot wait to talk about all of these magic things you have not ever heard of. And Dan, I know, is also, like, outside of Vintage Cube, I know Dan has been 100% unplugged. So I think it's going to be a fun week of me blasting you guys with news, and then you guys get to say, nice.
Yeah, we're going to put me and Lexi both in mono this week because there's just going to be one voice in each of your ear going, what?
Yeah. What?
Explain that?
Can you explain that, please? All right, let's run the song. And welcome back. It is time for the news as usual these days. Honestly, thank goodness. It seems that we have more big event announcements, starting with they have released the dates and the formats for the next 2 Spotlight Series events. For those of you who do not know, the Magic Spotlight Series is a new series of events that are, I would say, a bit more explicitly focused on the competitive side of things. You know, right now we have regional qualifiers and we have MagicCons as the 2 big Magic events. Regional qualifiers, obviously super focused on the competitive side of things as they're invite only. Once you're there, you're trying to qualify for the Pro Tour. If you get to the finals, you qualify for Worlds, that kind of stuff. And then obviously MagicCons, they have some bigger, they've had some like 100K events at them for limited and standard and that kind of stuff. But those are a lot more like show up, see all your friends, play as much Commander as you can handle within a day. Check out our 300 vendors, go to panels. feels like the Spotlight series is kind of in between the two of those. A lot of people have been calling them the return of Grand Prix, which is the events that used to be one or two every weekend all around the United States. Come show up, play some Magic the Gathering. We just had the first ever Magic Spotlight series in Atlanta this last weekend. We'll talk more about that later, but they have announced Spotlight Dragons is going to be a part of SCGCon Denver, featuring Dragonstorm Limited on April 11th through 13th. Any draft or sealed enjoyers on the podcast right now? Lexi?
I like draft.
Yeah, draft rules. I think draft easily best and favorite way to play Magic at the moment.
Yeah, that makes sense. Are you excited specifically for Tarkir Dragonstorm? Tarkir Dragonstorm, the upcoming set that they have shown a little bit of. We just know it's on Tarkir and there's dragons.
So I haven't seen any new cards if they have shown any of them yet. But original Tarkir is one of the best limited environments of all time. So says many people who are very, very good at limited, and myself included. Not putting myself in their echelon, though. But yeah, great limited environment in the original set. I would imagine that we're coming back to 3-color limited pool for Dragonstorm. These are great reaction shots we're getting here. If you're not watching this on YouTube right now, you're really missing out. But yeah, I think it's going to be very fun. I have very high hopes for it. It has certainly like big shoes to fill in terms of meeting its predecessor in how good it's going to be. But I'm excited for it. I think it's going to be a very good time. Hopefully, I love 3-color limited environments. I love when drafting lands matters.
Lexi, in what I think is incidentally going to be a recurring theme of this episode later on, how much do you think your lack of interest in Magic over the last couple of months has to do with the fact that so much of what's going on with Magic right now, except for like the last two sets have been a little different, but the last couple of sets, even Tarkir Dragonstorm, a big appeal to many people, including myself and obviously Dan, is that we're going back to a classic plane for the old head Magic players.
Yeah.
You hear Tarkir, do you care? You're
No.
like, Tarkir Dragonstorm? I don't care.
I don't care. I think that's so mean, but I have been like looking into other remastered sets, and I think that obviously Tarkir is not remastered, but like thinking about planes, thinking about specific areas of Magic's past, I feel like I don't get the same excitement from it as other people do. And I think that, I don't know, I don't think that's a bad thing. I do think that Magic does a good job of like, every once in a while it makes a different area of the audience like give a round of applause, you know? Like, it can't get everyone all at once, so Magic does a good job of being like, you in the back, people that have been playing forever, go ahead and give me a round, and then people in the front who just got here, go ahead and give me a round. And I feel like that, even this event in general, doesn't exactly appeal to me, but I'm sure that it, I don't know, I'm sure that it will, if that makes sense. Like, everything is making a first impression in that area of things.
And then when we get to go back to Strixhaven, Lexi will be there hooting and hollering.
I will order a parade. I'll get a baton.
See, that's how I feel about going back to Tarkir.
But it's like, how can you handle it that often, though? I feel like I guess how often do we go back to older sets? I don't remember the last...
It's been a lot more the last couple of years than it used to be.
Yeah,
Certainly,
so I feel
it's
like...
a lot
really
longer in the
cranked up.
cycle. Yeah.
Yeah,
we probably
that,
do like
like-
one a year at least now.
Yeah.
But I guess it's a
don't
factor
know.
of like, are we going back to a set that you care about as a Magic player, which is not always the case.
Right. Exactly.
I'm specifically pretty excited that this is going to be a major limited event. We haven't gotten many of those for a very long time. Limited GPs used to kind of be a hallmark of the calendar every year. We haven't had anything like that in a while. The closest we had was the limited 100K at MagicCon Minneapolis. That sounds wrong. Anyways, I don't remember the specific event it was at, but we did have an 100K limited event at a MagicCon not that long ago, but still, that's different than there being a like major competitive event like these Spotlight Series events are trying to be, that is just going to be a draft, and a relatively new set draft as well. Kind of cool. Dan, you've been trying to say something for the last 5 minutes. What was it?
No, I was going to ask Lexi, as a person who is primarily a newer player, do you find the older sets to be like meaningfully different in like how cool they are? Like, have you looked at Tarkir at all and been like, that is not cool? Like, that is like Magic is doing a different thing now that I enjoy more than older sets like that.
I would say, yeah, I do that pretty often. I think that there's juice to when we come back to it in a set, like a newer set specifically. And I feel like I vibe more with the newer takes on it. I'm thinking about Ixalan, like that was a set where the original stuff, like I know so many people that are directly like so attached to some of the original Ixalan cards. But in this like kind of come back to it, I feel like the energy feels younger. Like I don't know, some of the themes in the cards, a lot of the art, like it being very, very art focused too. I feel like I have a very different take. And sometimes I look at the old stuff and I go, I don't really like it as much as the new stuff. So
that's an interesting point, especially with Ixalan in particular, because I feel the same way in that the return to that set feels a lot more poignant and thoughtful in the way that they approached it and the execution of it. I am not really a fan of Ixalan. The flavor of it, of like the mixture of dinosaurs and vampires and all of it, is like a little bit too much for me. But I am a very big fan of the return to Ixalan and how focused it was on like Mesoamerican art and culture and things like that. It was, I think, a much more interesting take on that world.
Yeah.
Well, we also have Spotlight Secret Lair coming up Indianapolis on May 30th, the weekend of May 30th. Hey, I can tell you that much. I'll probably be there. I can drive. They say that it's going to be a modern event. So I am interested in what's up with like the Spotlight Secret Lair branding. Is it just going to like, are they going to have a bunch of exclusive Secret Lair drops there? Are they going to have some kind of funky Secret Lair flavored event there?
Because only play SpongeBob decks was going to be the gimmick.
Right, exactly. Because we have 3 Spotlight events to look at now. We had Spotlight Foundations, which was a standard event focused on the fact that Foundations was just put into standard, right? We have Spotlight Dragons, okay, for SCG Denver, which has Tarkir Dragonstorm Limited. I can see the connection there. Spotlight Secret Lair and the modern format. I mean, I guess they're going to start making the new Secret Lair cards all modern legal moving forward, so I don't know. Not all of them. Many of them. And they're all going to be in standard. So that's that. Excited though. I'm excited to have a big event come to Indianapolis. Love going to Indy. It's one of my favorite cities. Go Colts, all that kind of dumb stuff. On to the next point. On to the next one here. Brandon Sanderson has said that a Universes Beyond Cosmere set is a probably, in his opinion. I think I'm the one Brandon Sanderson had on the call today, I fear, but
I know he's a sci-fi author.
Yeah, like sci-fi fantasy.
Yeah, I know a lot about him, but I have not read his books. It's just so wild.
Yep. He is a popular, for those who do not know, he is a popular and quite decent and most notably extremely fast sci-fi and fantasy writer. The vast majority of his books are all in a big shared universe called the Cosmere, which is becoming more and more relevant.
They just also released, but the Kickstarter ended a little while ago, Cosmere RPG as well.
Yes, so. They've done an RPG now. So there's a whole RPG system, a whole ton of cool stuff like that. He has his own convention every year now called Dragonsteel. And at Dragonsteel, someone asked him, was like, hey, I've been a big fan of your books and I'm a big fan of Magic. And I know you're a big fan of Magic because they're ever going to be in Universes Beyond Cosmere. And he pretty much came out and said like Wizards came to him and was like, hey, is this something you would be interested in doing? And he said, yes. And then he hadn't. He said, I wrote back and I said, yes, absolutely. Gimme.
That was my first thought too. Is if Wizards reached out to me, they were like, "Would you do this?" I do like money.
Would you? Yeah, exactly. And then he didn't hear back from them, which he said wasn't uncommon. They're a very big company, a lot of. He said, "This is Brandon fan theory time. They reached out to a bunch of people, including some large IPs, and I think all of them said yes. Like, what are you gonna do?"
Yeah, I mean, that's just a very common like tactic for someone who is in that position at a company. You cast a very wide net on people who are very large and very small. You get a lot of yeses. You weed out the yeses that are not as valuable to you. And if you get someone like, I don't know, if you get like some like Star Wars level.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
And I think like the Cosmere is popular enough these days that it probably could sell some.
It sounds really cool, like
feels...
hearing you just describe it vaguely.
Yeah, it feels like the Lord of the Rings set, honestly. It just feels like, and even though Brandon Sanderson, I don't think his, as of this year, I'm sure in the future, he'll be in the ranks of like Tolkien and whatever, but I do think that it is another thing where it's like we can get a lot of people outside of Magic into Magic, because Brandon Sanderson fans are very avid, very active, very vocal, and I don't know. I think like as much as it's good for the money, there's just like, or it's not even as much as it's good for the money. As much as I think about like, oh, this would just be good branding, whatever. He doesn't work with a lot of other brands, I would say. The money would have to be in the bag, and the bag would be huge. Because this, I don't know, Cosmere is huge, I feel like.
Yeah. Growing more and more every day. Yep. Another Brandon Sanderson factoid, Dan, I guess, is like, he, over the pandemic, like lockdowns and stuff, used his free time when he wasn't traveling to write 4 novels that he didn't tell anyone about. And then they did a Kickstarter for it, and it's by far the most successful Kickstarter of all time.
Wow. That's really
just
rad.
like, yeah, it's just
I mean, just the idea of this person like having their own universe of books and everything, like that's a very well thought out thing. And like just on the basis of that alone, like that's the sort of thing that like I would like to see universes beyond devoted to things that are like very carefully thought out in that sort of fashion.
Very fair. And of course, in his answer, he also had to throw a dig at Wizards of the Coast. I do think it's probably something that'll happen, assuming MTG doesn't fall apart. You know, the wheels don't come off by trying to do so many sets in 1 year. Oh,
nice,
brother!
Nice. Get their asses, Brandon. Brandon Sanderson, my hero.
So, as the resident Sanderhead on the.
Is that what you guys call yourselves?
No, I don't know if there's a Sanderson fan name. I just like reading his books. Okay,
the Sanders.
I'm sure there's a name for themselves.
I'm trying to combine fandom and Sanderson into a portmanteau, but it's not working.
The Brandom.
Okay, there we go. Thank you, Lexi.
I just think his books are quite nice, and I will read any fantasy slop that's put in front of me.
Slap that on the front of your book, Brandon Sanderson. Cal Jones, host of the Herald.
They're better than slop, that's for sure. They're better than slop, but anyways, I would personally love a Cosmere set. We have like one directly referential Cosmere Magic card. It's a Secret Lair Grand Abolisher. Is definitely it is a 1-to-1 direct reference to his main series, the Stormlight Archive.
That's the one where he's got like a big suit of like paladin sort of armor
in a massive sword. Yeah,
nice. That's cool.
Yep. Wow. How much of The Way of Kings have you read, Lexi? I see you have it there.
Big ass book.
Oh wait, I have a bookmark still in there. To page 129.
Okay, so you're about I was about to say you're about a tenth or less
I would have thought
out
you
of
had read like
1,254.
He picked out such a tiny portion of the pages before saying 100. That's like, whoa.
That was perhaps like my feat of 2024 was his 5th book, Wind and Truth, came out, and it's 1,400 pages,
God.
and I read it in 5 days.
That's crazy.
Of active reading time. That was my
really. That wasn't your
December
inactive
marathon.
reading time.
Yeah.
Wow.
Well, like it was 11 days, but I only read it for 5 of those days. You know. Anyways, enough of me talking about Brandon Sanderson. If a Brandon Sanderson Magic the Gathering 4 set came down the pipeline, I'd be a happy guy. It is almost time for SCGCon Portland Regional Championship. I mentioned earlier, the Regional Championships is many people's ticket to the Pro Tour. You play in Regional Championship qualifiers. If you do well at a Regional Championship qualifier, you get to go to the Regional Championship. And then if you do well at the Regional Championship, you get to go on to the Pro Tour or even the World Championship. Regional Championship Portland specifically is going to be a modern event. So, hey, hopefully modern is on a pretty decent spot. After the massive overhauling bans. We'll get to see if Mox Opal is a big problem or not and all that kind of stuff.
Yeah, I've seen a huge amount of experimentation going on in Modern right now. I don't know if it's really like settled in any particular way, but I have seen a lot of the Bosch and Roll, Thrape and Use of the world putting out some very wild videos of things that you can do in Modern now, which have looked extremely fun.
Yep. And my favorite Magic the Gathering content creator, Steve Stillman, just released a Timber Breach video yesterday showing off the power of Mox Opal. It's truly astounding. Truly astounding. And in that vein, I would like to, I'll have someone on the show before the championship, before the RC, give us a little bit of a breakdown. I have some people in mind that I'd like to reach out to. So look forward to that, I guess. The top 128 finishers of the event will automatically just re-qualify for the next regional championship that they have an availability for. The top 32 will get their little book stamped for the Pro Tour. They get to go play in the next Pro Tour, or whichever Pro Tour this qualifies people for. I assume it's not directly the next one. And the top 2 will also get invited to the World Championships. And I did also see today, we've got Corey Baumeister, Mason Clark, Alighty, and also Carmen Klimperens on commentary. It's pretty fun teams.
Very good crew.
Very good crew. A good squad. And I did also see, if you're just like wanting to casually go to SCGCon Portland, there are going to be 18 artists there officially, which is a lot of artists to have at one event.
Especially for an RCQ, I feel.
Well, it's not an RCQ, it's an RC.
Oh, I'm sorry.
It's
for an
RC. Yeah, sorry.
Yeah.
And I am running out of time to have that Modern breakdown on the show because it is February 7th to 9th. So if you are a gamer looking to game in the Portland area or within a reasonable driving distance, or if you're a freak like me and would fly to one of these things from the eastern side of the United States, now it's time to think about it. Lexi, I look forward to you qualifying for the regional championship in 2025.
And I will.
Okay.
That's it.
We're time to put you in the hyperbolic time chamber.
It's happening right now as we speak.
Lexi's frantically Googling, what is Mox Opal?
I know what it is.
Okay.
I have the
rules next?
article pulled up.
Oh, the
ban
bans.
and restricted announcement.
Yep.
I can tell you exactly what it does. It's a 0 mana legendary artifact with Metalcraft. When you tap it, it adds 1 mana of any color. Activate this ability only if you can control 3 or more artifacts. You're welcome. I wasn't reading at all.
Lexi, you really ripped that one off the dome. I'm
Thank
very
you.
proud
I'm
of
so
you.
good at this.
I'm very proud of you. All right, that's all we got for the news. It is a new year. It is 2025. And with the changes, with the new year comes, at long last, I got to sit down and think about the show, think about anything I may have wanted to do differently with the show.
I came out of fired on air right now.
I came out of the hyperbolic time chamber and I decided, Dan, it's been a great run. Man, you really got ahead of my bit there. You really got me. No one will be fired. No one will be fired. They
can't fire me or even pay me.
They can't. I'm gonna have to figure out how to change the guest invite link to the
I was gonna say, you're gonna have to change
Dan
the Riverside.
Dan beats me here every week. I show up and I'm like,
Next time you're gonna show up and I'll already be 15 minutes deep with another guest.
Wow.
Yeah, exactly.
This is the new Herald's horn with Dan last name. Dan, I'll just take yours, Dan Jones. I'm not gonna use my real last name.
Yes.
So with the new year, no, we will not be firing any more co-hosts. No plan to add more co-hosts at this time. But what we will have is some new recurring segments throughout the years of 2024. I would say we had like 4 segments, 3 of which we did very consistently. There was like the news, which is going to be here every time. There's always news to talk about. There's the product watch, which is going to be here 95% of the time because there's always more Magic product to talk about. There was the co-host notebook, and very occasionally there was letter to the editor. We're going to be mixing it up. So moving forward, the news and the product watch will be on most episodes, and then we'll be filling in the rest of the show, remaining 1 to 2 segments with some different variety. We've got some trivia plans. We've got the co-host notebook. It'll come and go. It won't be every episode anymore, but it'll come and go. We gotta catch up with the co-hosts, but they don't have something to talk about every week, right? Isn't that right, Dan?
No.
Okay. Dan is advocating for the co-host notebook being every week. Write that down.
Oh, wait, no. I was agreeing with you.
Oh, I said, isn't that right? And you said no.
Well, no, I think the listeners will understand.
Some trivia plans. We'll keep mixing in the co-host's notebook from time to time. And then, of course, we will also still be doing letter to the editor. Send in your letters at editorial@heraldtour.com. And we will also have this brand new segment, the Constructed Corner. Well, we'll be talking about constructed events from time to time, especially when really notable ones come up. It's time for Constructed Corner Standard.
Oh, you want me to do one off the top of the head? Constructed Corner
Standard.
Welcome to the Constructed Corner Standard. We're going to be talking about the Magic Spotlight Foundations event that just went down in Atlanta. It was won by Odenheimer. Look out on Gruul Aggro. It's the Heartfire hero in the Ember Heart Challenger deck. Get a ton of mice, pump them up like crazy, kill your opponent. Isn't that so fun? It's that deck, but of course it also has some Slick Shot Show Off in it to kill your opponents even faster. And I love the recurrence of Leyline of Resonance in these decks. Double up on those spells. Go absolutely crazy. For those of you who do not know, Leyline of Resonance is a card from Dustmore, and it costs 2 in red, but since it is a Leyline, if it's in your opening hand, you can begin the game with it on the battlefield, and then when you cast an instant or sorcery spell that targets only a single creature that you control, you can copy the spell, and then you may choose new targets for the copy. Pretty dang good with all of these pump spells and all of these creatures like Heartfire Hero that cares about being targeted. Since, of course, Heartfire Hero, it's a 1-drop, 1/1. When it becomes the target of a spell or ability you control for the first time each turn, put a +1/+1 counter on it. So you can only target it once, but the Leyline of Resonance will be, targeting something else. Anyways, I digress. Great inclusion. Such a sick little evolution that seems to have been popping up over the last week or two. Really cool to see this win.
It shores up an interesting weakness in that kind of a deck where you have all of these Rancor effects that you're putting onto a single creature, and that just helps you diversify where you're putting all of your threats and just helping to avoid the... I don't know what's legal in Standard right now, but they've got access to Go for the Throat and some pretty final removal, right?
There's quite I think the best is Go for the Throat, and I know people are still playing Cut Down and that kind of stuff.
Yeah, lots of really clean removal that you could possibly have that can really make your monstrous growth? Is that the red spell? I don't remember. Monstrous roll? I don't remember. It does something.
It does create a monstrous roll. That's true.
It does create a monstrous roll. I think monstrous might even be in the title, but I don't know.
It does really seem that the format is solidifying around Dimir, Gruul, and Azorius aggro decks. I would say that the format is perhaps solidifying around Enduring Curiosity decks. It turns out that getting to draw a ton of cards off of your creatures connecting is simply really good, and it kind of never goes away unless your opponent has double enchantment removal or whatever, or an exile effect.
Flash, right?
Enduring Curiosity does indeed have Flash.
Flash 4/3 body. So it's an incredible.
Yep. People can really get in there with it, get tricksy with it. But the Dimir and Azorius decks are really built around Enduring Curiosity. You have to get on the board turn 1 or turn 2, or else they will just like run you over. You have to be prepared to be run over by a bunch of little dudes drawing a bunch of cards off Enduring Curiosity, or you will just lose the game.
Have you gotten to play any Standard, Cal?
I have not, still to this day. Like I said, I've been thinking about it. And some of these decks from the event do look really sick.
Yeah, Standard decks look really fun. I have yet to get into myself, but it's on my list. I really want to try out some new Modern decks and some new Standard decks because they both look really interesting right now.
Yep. The other decks that really popped out at me, there was a really funky Zur Eternal Schemer deck in like the 3rd/4th spot. And there was also a Talented Otter deck built around comboing with Valley Floodcaller and Enduring Vitality. That's like basically the return of Jeskai Ascendancy for you old heads out there. Just make a ton of mana, tap all your dudes for mana, go crazy, go crazy. There was also a sick kind of, I don't want to call it a breakout because this deck was gaining popularity over the last week or two. You know, the Jerry T podcast talked about it in depth on their latest episode, which I'm sure is a boon to the popularity of any deck. It's an Esper Enchantments deck built largely around casting and then picking up the card Hopeless Nightmare. It's a single black enchantment. When it enters the battlefield, each opponent discards a card and loses 2 life. And then if it's ever put into a graveyard from the battlefield, you can scry 2 and you can pay 2 and a black to sacrifice it. But the deck itself basically just plays a bunch of ways to pick up that card. The most common one, like the most ideal one, being Nurturing Pixie, which is a 1-drop flyer. When it enters the battlefield, return up to 1 target non-fairy, non-land permanent you control to your hand. And then if you do, it gets a +1/+1 counter. So you get to play a 1-drop flyer, 1/1, make it into a 2/2, pick up your enchantment that you already that you already wanted to put back into your hand anyway, and go to town. And it's also really good at looping in the same way. It can do kind of the same thing with Nowhere to Run, which is a 2-drop enchantment with flash, which gives a creature -3/-3. And it also turns off Hexproof and Ward. I'm sure that may be relevant from time to time in the format. Maybe not right this second, but it's such a funky little deck, and it has a couple different plans that it can use to win the game.
It's a great engine, though.
Yeah, exactly. It works around that engine, but then it also it like has Entity Tracker, which is an enchantress. So an enchantment you control enters, draw a card, flash 2/3. It's got Fear of Isolation also to return bounce permanents you control to your hand. It's got a 1-drop 1/1 that gets a +1/+1 counter whenever an enchantment you control enters the battlefield. So just a ton of really slick little. This is like an enchantment deck through and through. It's kind of super sick to see something like this synergistic in the format right now, when so many of the other decks are like, yeah, so here's my 1-drop flyer and here's my 4-drop card that draws me a ton of cards. Can you beat this?
I was going to say that, like, what little experience I do have with Modern and Standard, I played a little bit of Modern, like, I would say the year before last. Like, I built a little fairy rogue deck, and I really liked it, but the meta was so frozen and was so like full of things like that, where it's like, I don't know, it was very aggro, and it was all like Gruul, like it's all red green. It was very sad to try to be creative and be in Modern. I feel like everyone just kept telling me to go and check the best decks, but none of them sounded interesting. And both of those, like everything you've been talking about sounds interesting to me, and I'm like, dang, this is way better. Sounds so much more creative. So, I mean, I guess that's the nature of having a window of cards that you're really allowed to look at to build your decks.
Mm-hmm. Restrictions do breed creativity, as
absolutely.
They say. I do also gotta say, I'm still stuck at this enchantments deck. It also gets to play 4 of This Town Ain't Big Enough, which is a 5-drop instant that returns up to 2 target non-land permanents to their owner's hand, but the spell costs 3 less if if it targets a permanent you control. So you can like,
okay, so it's like run away together if you target your own Hopeless Nightmare.
well, yeah, it's like run away together. So, but you can like target your own thing and target their thing, or you can target two of your things and pick up two of your things. It still costs two. Or, you know, if you absolutely need to, you can pay like the whole price and bounce two of their things for $5.
Yeah, I mean, those tempo plays that you're describing are really brutal. Just like the first one you said, if you like play Hopeless Nightmare turn 1 against your aggro opponent, pick it up on turn 2 and play it again. That's like if your opponent is playing a land on each of their turns and then maybe also casting a spell in between there, that's pretty much their entire hand gone by the end of turn 2.
Yep, exactly. And so that was this event. It was, if we look at like, even looking at the top 64, all of this information I've said has come from MTG Top 8. So if I'm wrong, no, I'm not. No, I'm very often wrong with the constructed stuff. I'm trying to get better about that. It is Gruul aggro, Golgari aggro, you know, this Esper enchantment deck, and then like a lot of Dimir, a little bit of mono white control, which was like a, you know, just, you really want to stay alive as long as you can, and then like cast Sunfall and, you know, not die. Lay down arms is a really good sorcery right now. But cool format, really cool. I got to watch some of the coverage from the event this weekend. If you did not get to, I would recommend go and watch it. Especially, I'm sure watching the top 8 was a whole blast. None of the enchantment decks made it into the top 8. Yeah, the top 8 was aggro, Gruul, Dimir, the Otters deck, the Zur deck, and then some Azorius and Gruul aggro decks as well. But a cool event all the same. I will be going back and watching some of the coverage of, especially if I can find a later round with one of these Esper enchantment decks in it. I want to see it.
I'm just now looking at the Zur deck, and I love the conceit of this deck is that you're playing Zur and then casting the Overlords for their Foretell or whatever it is cost that puts them on the battlefield, and then you animate them so they get to like attack and get their swing triggers. That's incredible.
Yep. And then they also have Death Touch, Lifelink, and Hexproof.
Wow,
because Zur's on the battlefield. Yeah. So you get to just get some cheap Overlords. Yeah. You get to get some cheap Overlords, and then like sometimes you also cast Atraxa somehow, which I don't understand because I haven't looked closely.
I mean, if you have, there's 4 Overlord of the Hauntwoods, so when that when it ETBs or attacks, you get an everything land. So yeah, if you do that 1 or 2 times, it's not really that hard.
Atraxa or yeah, cool. And it also just gets to be like an up the beanstalk leyline binding deck because you can like
what a sweet list.
Impend an Overlord that draws a card off up the beanstalk. Pretty hot. All right, let's move on. We've been going for so long. Let's go on to our wonderful recurring segment. It's time for the Product Watch.
Product Watch.
The Product Watch is presented by Card Conduit, the easiest way to sell your Magic cards. After all, you need to clear out space for all the new cards you'll be getting from these new sets. Brought to you by the beloved team behind Card Hoarder, Card Conduit does the hard work of getting you the best buy list prices available for your cards. All you have to do is to send them one package, taking advantage of your selection of their 3 services. I use the sorted service, which has you collate and enter cards ahead of time in return for the lowest fees. Don't worry. You can just send them a huge box of random unsorted cards and they'll figure it out. I've used Card Conduit myself 5 different times to thin my collection, and I've had exclusively great experiences. Use code HORN at checkout or use the link in the podcast description to get 10% off your fees and help support the show. Dan, I look forward to seeing your $250 Card Conduit buy list order come through.
There was one part of your ad read that I thought was very funny, and I can't remember which part of it was now, so I'm moving past it. And you're really
is it the clearing out space for all the new cards you're going to be getting from these new sets?
They'll figure it out. I like the idea of like you sending them a bunch of cards and they would look at the box and be like, "Oh, they're Magic cards. I get what this is. This is like because we're the business."
Oh,
who sent us this?
Welcome to the Product Watch. It's the part of the show where we talk about all of the Magic the Gathering sets that have come out or are going to come out or have been announced or in preview season, all that kind of good stuff. Luckily, this happens so often, we have stuff to talk about almost every single week on every single episode. Innistrad Remastered previews are here formally. They're continuing. We got a little bit of a look at the set at the beginning of December alongside some other sets as well. But now we are in Innistrad Remastered season proper. The set will release on January 24th, 2025. It includes a range of cool treatments, including retro frames, borderless cards, and then there are 10 movie poster cards. Mark Rosewater kicked off the preview season proper with the ins and outs of Innistrad Remastered, an article digging into some really cool behind-the-scenes stories for all three of our separate trips to Innistrad. It's worth reading. I'll link it in the podcast description if y'all want to go check it out. The main things they've shown off so far, past the first range of cards we got to see, in the beginning of December, they showed off a beautiful Thalia Heretic Cathar. That's the 3-drop one, not the 2-drop one, by the incomparable Winona Nelson. Mono bangers out of that artist, that's for sure. And then they also showed off Bruna and Gisela are going to be here. They didn't show off any cool treatments for them, but they showed off the base versions for the base version of the set. And as usual, they confirmed that Bruna will be a rare and Gisela will be a mythic. So it's a cool thing. It's a cool thing coming down the pipeline. We've had several remastered sets now, and I wanted to take this opportunity maybe to talk a little bit about how we feel about remastered sets as a product line. If listeners, you are not familiar with the remastered product line, many of them are based on a block or a plane. We've had Dominaria remastered. We have had Ravnica remastered. We have had Time Spiral remastered. For Time Spiral block. Yeah, for Time Spiral block. And now we are going to have Innistrad remastered. So this set will pull on iconic cards from all across the 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 sets that we have spent on Innistrad's Creepy Shores, the original block, the Eldritch Moon block, and then the most recent and most disappointing Crimson Vow and Midnight Hunt sets. So this set is basically going to be a big collative set, combinatory set, that will bring a bunch of old cards into new treatments and all that kind of stuff. These have been really hit or miss for me, and I love the planes we've had so far. I love Time Spiral block. I love, Dominaria. Dominaria Remastered was kind of a banger just because there was so much cool stuff in there, because so many of the most iconic cards in Magic history technically come from Dominaria and all that kind of stuff, right? And Ravnica Remastered, there's some cool stuff in there with like some Shocklands and stuff, but I don't know. I think I'm just kind of off these sets. They kind of just feel like over and over they keep releasing them, and it's just like the sales pitch is like, hey guys, you can get a hot Dark Confidant now. Mm-hmm. There's a borderless Dark Confidant. Isn't that cool?
So you're going on record as saying you're anti-hot Dark Confidant.
Well, I think that's
I'll leave this call.
I think it's a fine thing. It's just not something that has me beating the door down compared to some of the stuff that has maybe taken up this kind of release schedule spot in the past of like master sets or what have you, where we get all encompassing really cool limited sets and reprints rather than something just focused in on a specific plane. Lexi, does this kind of stuff have any appeal to you at all? I guess part of it is that you're not that familiar with Innistrad. You've had two visits to Innistrad, and they were the two worst that we've had.
Yeah.
What is your impression of Innistrad as a player?
Innistrad it was kind of a weird, I don't know. They felt very weird. It didn't feel very good. It didn't feel very good to play, personally. And I felt like
very exciting.
Yeah, I wasn't. Whereas even for like Kaldheim, for these other sets that were kind of around Innistrad, I think that was in the same year. I'm not sure, but either way, I consider. Yeah, I'm like Kaldheim is close to Innistrad. Kaldheim, I felt like opening rares and opening like legendary creatures and opening like things that could be good for Modern, Standard, or Commander was so exciting. Like I kept getting packs, but I don't know. I felt like the juice was lost over time with Innistrad. I don't know. And I said this at the beginning of the show, but I prefer revisiting things with a different intentional touch more than I do like, let's go back just to see the sights and like reprint things. And, you know, I only want that if it's going to be like actually balanced. Like, are you actually balancing out the like economy with like how you are, you know, choosing to reprint things? I think
that's a really good way of putting it. It's almost like the equivalent of being like, do you want to like rewatch your favorite movie right now, or like rewatch like your favorite SNL bits from such and such comedian or something like that?
Yeah,
it doesn't feel like it has a lot of its own identity. I think that there are a lot of like great aspects of it. Like it's great for people who want the specific cards in it, the Brunas and Gisellas that are like expensive cards. So like it brings the price of those down. It gives people new options for getting special treatments of them, which is fun. The original Innistrad was touted as one of the best limited environments of all time. So, like, I think these sets, especially the more recent ones, have really paled in comparison because they just haven't lived up to the hype of the original Innistrad. And I fear that a part of it is that the design of Innistrad sets have become so set and like theme focused that a lot of the cards aren't very good outside of the context of Innistrad Limited or playing specific horror themed decks like zombie decks, etc. And there's just not as many like really powerful and memorable cards in the sets because of that.
I think that's very true. And I think something especially like Innistrad Remastered will kind of suffer from that even more, where I do think some of the most iconic Innistrad cards came from one or two of these sets. We have some cool stuff. I mean, like iconic to me in Shadows over Innistrad and Eldritch Moon and that kind of stuff. But that was just because like that was when I was like peak obsessed with Magic, and therefore I have some level of association with those cards that are cool. I don't think a lot of people that were playing much before then, or a lot of people who were playing much past then, will be all that excited to see. I don't know.
I was a relatively young
Jace, Wielder of Mysteries,
but yeah,
who cares?
Just there's not many cards that are very exciting that I would be happy to return to. Like we're gonna get an Avacyn reprint. That's cool.
Mm-hmm.
Yep. We're going to get an Avacyn reprint. That's sick. We're going to get a Snapcaster Mage reprint. I'm sure that's sick. It's kind of nowhere near as powerful as it used to be.
I think it's generally like a pretty good thing, like I said, in terms of like getting cards in players' hands. But I think that, Cal, you hit on the biggest detriment to all of this in the beginning, in that like this is taking up time that we could be devoting to new releases, to like new cards in general. I would love to have new cards that are cool and fun instead of getting the 16th Snapcaster reprint.
Yep, exactly. Oh, I do gotta say they did just show off some more cards. They showed off some more cards today.
Snapcaster's going full frontal in this one.
Snapcaster Mage wows in new photo.
All right, I take back everything I said. We're getting a borderless, tireless tracker. I am so in. Innistrad Remastered is the set for me.
I like a tireless tracker.
Yeah, and they showed up. You know, this is the kind of set. This is the kind of stuff that will do numbers. There's going to be a retro border Delver. There's going to be a retro Thing in the Ice. And of course, at the Mythic slot, there will be a retro Craterhoof Behemoth. So that, you know, there's stuff in here that excites people. But
I mean, at the end of the day, like a lot of the cards, like throughout all 7 of the sets, as you said, which is an incredible number. I didn't know it was 7. Like you can make a great set out of taking all of the best hits out of all of those sets and putting them together. Like I'm sure it's going to be like a lot of fun to open, which I think is probably like the biggest aspect of trying to do this, is like making a fun booster box experience. But I think that will ultimately be probably the best thing about it, is that is a good booster box opening experience.
Which, hey, at the end of the day, that is not the worst thing to have. Honestly, it's just
it's what keeps a lot of people playing.
Yeah, exactly. So, hey, there's something for everyone in Magic the Gathering. Innistrad Remastered, I'm sure, will certainly be some subsection of people's favorite set of the entire year. I personally am just a little tired of the remasters. Well, I think that's all we have for this episode of the Herald's Horn. As always, though, our beloved co-host, is there anything else that you would like to leave our listeners with before we go? Let's start with Lexi. Welcome back, Lexi.
If you know anyone in your life that is down on their luck, buy them a Rubik's Cube. That's my little plug. It will confuse you enough to take you out of your funk. I swear. That's it. That's my plug.
Sounds perfect to me. Dan, anything for you?
Same old. Don't forget to take money from your local library. Dan, Moderately Anonymous MTG on all the platforms, YouTube, Twitch. Come find me. That's it.
Oh, I'll come find you.
Oh,
I'm already there.
I think that there might be a donation link in my link tree, and if it is there, donate money to it because I want to buy Chibi Robo on GameCube. And that game is expensive.
Ask me how I know. That's all we got for this week. We will be back next week with tons more news, tons more family appropriate fun, and I'm sure lots more tooting. However, as always, first we have the interview. This week we have the one and only Saffron Olive. Stay tuned. Goodbye.
My number one fan? I hope that never makes it in.
This week, I'm joined by Seth, probably better known as Saffron Olive. Okay, I can't do it. To talk about a little bit of his history with the game, his history with content creation, all that kind of stuff. We end up talking about a range of topics. I came in, I said, I'm going to talk to this guy about how he popularized budget content and that kind of stuff. But, we just ended up all over the place instead. It's a great conversation. I'm sure you'll love it. This was a really special one for me because, well, Seth was one of the very first Magic YouTubers that I ever consistently watched, if not the very first. His series like Against the Odds and Budget Magic really kind of helped open my eyes to more things that Magic could be in a casual, chill, interesting sense beyond just opening up MTG Top 8 or, MTG Goldfish, looking at the top of the format and then trying to take that to my local Modern or, FNM. So this is a great interview. I had a lot of fun. Thanks for coming on, Seth. And welcome back. This week on this half of the show, I am joined by the one and only Seth, probably better known as Saffron Olive. Seth, welcome into the Horn. Thank you for being here.
Hey, thanks for having me. I'm super hyped to be on.
So, Seth, today I wanted to talk to you kind of about you and also a bit about your shockingly long history of being one of Magic the Gathering's most prominent proponents, creators, etc., etc. I don't want to say like, oh, how did the whole journey start? But I feel like that's something maybe a lot of people don't know because you've been around a long time, sneakily like a decade.
I figured out recently it's been a decade I've been at Goldfish now. So yeah, it really
crazy.
has been a time. It feels like Theros was just yesterday, and then it was actually 10 years ago.
Man, you started with Theros, and that was a decade ago?
That's about when I started
Theros
making
was
content,
a decade ago? Oh,
yeah,
brother.
Yeah.
I don't like to think about that. I don't like to think about that.
It's wild.
Yeah, how did that whole, because like I'll admit when I some of my very first introduction to Magic the Gathering content as a concept on YouTube or whatever was stumbling upon some of your, I guess then probably some of your earliest videos, because it would have been around Theros block, Tarkir block, that kind of time. And I was like, oh wait, people are doing cool stuff on youtube.com. But I think I just assumed that you had been doing that for forever already.
No, that was about the beginning of it, around like 2015, 2014. I started like writing articles, I think 2014, and then videos came in 2015. So yeah, that was right about the beginning. I kind of accidentally started making content. Like I never set out to be a content creator or to make Magic content. It actually so at the time, I really like opening boosters. I still have opening boosters. I actually have a whole channel now that's just about opening product because I just love cracking boosters because it's so fun. But so at the time, I like cracking boosters, but I had no money, right? I was like just in college and didn't have any money. So I would do these like EV breakdowns to try to figure out like, can I buy a box from this set? Or am I just going to get absolutely wrecked? Yeah. Like,
okay,
am I going to get wrecked?
I'm 75% to be slightly ahead. Let's do it.
Yeah, let's do it. Let's do it. But yeah, so I started doing that. And then I thought, well, maybe other people would enjoy these. So I just started like posting them on Reddit at the time and people liked them. And that's how I ended up meeting Richard, who was starting Goldfish around the same time. And he ended up reaching out and we connected through that. And he was like, hey, you should like, instead of posting these on Reddit, you should post them on my website. It's like got way more tools and it's way better. I was like, yeah, I'll try it. Why not? And then it's been 10 years and
the rest is history.
Yeah, the rest is history.
Posting articles and you started doing these consistent series, which you're still doing. What came first, Much or Brew or Budget Magic?
So Budget Magic was the first one. Okay. Budget Magic was first, and then Against the Odds was actually the second one, and Much Ado was the third of the big ones. Which that one actually came from Matt Sperling. I didn't have a good name for it, and so I put it out on Twitter. Like I need a name for this series, and it was Sperling that came up with Much Brew About Nothing as a pun. And I was like, I'm going to go with that. That's pretty good. That's
classic Sperling. Very smart individual,
for sure.
No, that's awesome. That's awesome. And then. Obviously, all of that stuff was very, very successful. Were you like one of the first budget-focused people doing that kind of stuff on YouTube?
Yeah. So the thing we realized when we started doing YouTube was like, at the time, and it's so funny how much the community has shifted in the 10 years that I've been making content. But at the time, content was super spiky, right? If you want to watch gameplay on YouTube, it's like Reed Duke doing a 3-hour super high level league with like Jundin Modern or something. And that was like what content was for the most part. So I realized pretty quick that like, I'm not a pro player, right? Like I'm a decent Magic player, but I'm not like trying to grind my way to a pro tour or something. So I don't think I'm going to try to compete with these guys directly by being like, I'm going to out John Reed Duke and Modern on YouTube. Like, that's just not going to happen, right? So I realized, well, there's stuff that's really not being done, which is like budget stuff, fun brews, like the Against the Odds stuff, the more casual stuff that like still trying to win. Like, I still want to have a good record, but I'm playing different stuff and trying to do different things than everyone was doing. And I think I was one of the like first people to really kind of pick up on the casual side of things. So I think that was kind of the innovation at the time.
One of the first like casual competitive
especially for gameplay. There were people like Evan Irwin was doing like his Magic show and stuff like that. So there were people who were making content, but not really casual gameplay content at the time.
Yep, definitely. And there was, I'm sure, even back in 2015, earlier than that, 2014, 13, there were a lot of people working on, a lot of people writing articles about that kind of stuff. Like, a lot of Commander articles even then still and all that kind of stuff when the Commander was, well, and it's relative to now infancy. That still felt huge at the time, but
that was the first big article I remember writing was a review of Commander 2013, which was the True Name Nemesis deck. That was like one of my first ever articles. Yeah, so it was right around when Commander was really starting to take off. Nothing like it is today, but like still, it was like starting to grow. Yeah,
that's hilarious. And what has it been like being around that long? You've kind of seen it all seen it all in the context of like, the massive explosion in popularity relative to what it was even, pre Commander 2013 or, Magic in general's grown a lot since then. The propagation of, we can say, casual competitive content on YouTube, which I do think you were a big propagator of. And then also, obviously, now Commander, which you have quite a bit of involvement in as well day to day. But what's it been like to be around that long?
It still seems like it was yesterday. Like until I actually stop and think about it, I'm like, oh my God, it's been 10 years now that I've been doing this. It still feels like it hasn't really been that long, but it's been very interesting to just see how much the game has evolved. Like to go from being so spiked focused to now being so Commander focused and so casual and trying to see like the competitive side start to pick back up now. We just had the first Spotlight series this weekend, so they're trying to get back into that, but the world's so different. Like my introduction to this, I remember just watching like SCG Opens on the weekend, SCG Legacy Opens, and people grinding out these tournaments, and that's what Magic was at the time.
That was every weekend. Just log on and watch Cedric and Peace Ali.
Man. Some of my best Magic memories. Oh,
yeah, exactly.
I love that era.
Yep.
But it went from that to what it is today, and like the huge growth and like Commander and Universes Beyond. So it's been wild just to see how much the game has evolved in the last 10 years.
Do you like it more or less, Seth?
Man, that's such a hard
value
question.
Neutral. No,
it's such a hard question because it really depends on like the format. Like overall, I love Magic just as much as I did like 10 years ago. But like Modern and before the recent bannings, like used to be my favorite format. And then I went through like recently until the bannings, like almost a year where I didn't hardly play any Modern. So like some things have gotten worse. On the other hand, like Commander's gotten so much bigger. It's so fun to be able to go to Command Fest and play with people and like all the different things that are going on with that. So I think there's like good and bad in that time period. But overall, like I still love Magic just as much as I did back then. It's just such a great game.
well, thank goodness. Thank goodness. No, I know, me too. It's different. It's an evolving love. Once upon a time, you love Standard or Limited, and maybe you stay loving that for forever, and then you evolve and you start playing Commander, and you get maybe tired of Commander or continue playing Commander, and you go back to Modern, and
Yep.
and
I mean, that's
always
part of what makes the game
is there waiting for you.
Oh, yep. Soon we will have Spider-Man. But yeah, it's part of what makes the game great, right? Is there's so many different formats. And I think that's what's kept me from ever like really getting burnt out or tired of Magic is like when one format sucks, I just play another format that doesn't suck at the time. So
yeah, that definitely makes sense. And I'm sure you're kept quite busy as well, because you still do like most of your major 3 shows like weekly and that kind of stuff too, right? In addition to whatever else is involved in being the content manager for Goldfish.
Yeah, there's some behind the scenes stuff too. I do the 3 big series, and then we've just added in like we have 2 podcasts now that we do each week, which we didn't have like in the early days of the channel. Commander Clash, the gameplay series. So there's been some extra stuff to come along too. But yeah, the three main series, they've been going for almost 10 years now. I think next year it'll be 10 years for all those YouTube series.
Do they all start in the same year?
They all started within like 6 months of each other or something, like one after another. Yeah.
Generational run. Seth, Saffron Olive.
Yes.
How would you define your goals of being the content manager of mtggoldfish.com?
Ooh. How would I define
What's
my
the plan?
goals? So,
be successful?
Yeah, be successful, of course. Like, I guess my goal is to make content that people enjoy and want to watch, and also do what I can for the community. I think there's some like responsibility that comes with having like a big platform, and I think that part of that's being authentic, being honest, even when it might not be the most popular take or whatever. So I think for me, it's kind of those 2 things, like do right by the community and try to make content that people enjoy watching.
Sure. Makes sense. Do you think you've largely been successful at that?
I think I've been pretty successful in making content that people enjoy watching, for sure. Mm-hmm. Like, obviously there's hits and misses, but overall, in the course of, the last decade, I think we've done pretty well there. The second one, it's tougher. Like, social media is tricky. It's tough. Like, when do you come across like you're just complaining about stuff? When are you trying to like actually fix a problem that's going to improve something for the community? How does it come across to the audience? Sometimes you're doing one thing and the audience takes it as another thing. So that was a little bit trickier. I would like to think I've done a decent job overall, but it's tough.
I know it is so tough. Like it's something I struggle with, and I have a platform that is less than 1/10 of the size of yours, just on twitter.com or whatever, right?
Yeah.
And it's just like, I'm just thinking, I've been sitting around thinking about Magic, open up my phone, launch some thought into the stratosphere, come back an hour later. Oh, brother.
Yep.
Oh, people have read more into this, way more than I thought. I could have worded this slightly better. I have.
Yeah. Yeah. That's how I do Twitter too, is like, it's a lot of it's not super planned out. And it's just kind of, here's the thing I've been thinking about in the last hour, and I put it on there, and sometimes it goes well and sometimes it goes less well. And then you learn from it and try to do better the next time. That's all you can do, really.
Would you say that you've gotten less opinionated on social media over time, or is it only increased?
So something I've really struggled with is I feel like I'm doing the same thing on social media that I was when I first started and had like 100 followers or 500 followers, and now I have almost 100,000 followers on Twitter. I don't know if that's correct though. Like that's something I struggle with is like, as your platform grows and more people are hearing what you say, should I be saying the same things that I was saying when I had 100 followers and 500 followers? And I still haven't really figured that out yet. So yeah, I'd like to think that I'm roughly the same as I was 10 years ago as far as the stuff I'm posting. Maybe the audience could answer better than I can though, because sometimes you can't see that stuff in yourself as easily as others can see it from the outside.
Yeah, we all evolve. I am exactly the same person that I was a decade ago, obviously. I don't think my wife would agree with me, but all the people who have been around me for the last decade, obviously, I'm a completely different person. But yeah, I think that's something that's hard to judge, hard to keep up with. But I don't know. I do value authenticity in this kind of stuff a lot because, well, when it comes to content, when it comes to making stuff that people like to check out, like to engage with, like to consume, experience, whatever kind of adjective that someone may like to use for that, some of which come with different connotations than others. I think that I think that any level of authenticity can and should be appreciated because I think, you know, people probably enjoy the people they follow for whatever version of themselves they put out there that they perceive to be authentic. And if you're actually being authentic on Twitter.com and related, I would say you should just stick with it. Yeah. You know, Seth, just be you.
That's kind of that's been my take. Like, sometimes it means the community's mad because I'm defending something that Wizard did that the community's not happy with. And sometimes it means Wizard's probably not happy because I'm saying they messed something up. And as long as you're being honest and like trying to be as positive as possible within your authenticity, then I guess that's the best you can do.
Yeah, I think probably also there's some disclaimer there for like if you being yourself online is just you spewing shit everywhere all of the time, then maybe, you know, sure, feel free to do it, but
yeah. It's not that enjoyable to follow, I guess, for me at least. I appreciate people who can be negative, and if you're never negative about anything, I can sometimes be a little sus and like, I don't know, are you being authentic? Are you shilling? Yeah. Like,
are you simply relentlessly positive?
Yeah. Right. Yeah, so if you're never negative, I'm a little suspicious, but at the same time, if you're just always negative, it eventually turns me off, and I'm just like, all right, I just don't want to deal with negativity all the time. So even if you're right, like, I might just not watch you as much as I would before.
Sure. And I think when it's, you know, I'm doing this show covering Magic the Gathering news and that kind of stuff, and it can be, I have to kind of adjust all of the time to often stay positive on the show because I think a lot of stuff that gets clocked as Magic the Gathering news, quote unquote, is very often something that comes with a negative connotation. Oh, yeah. An artist committed blatant plagiarism.
Yep.
A new set is out and people are mad that there's a new set already. You know, all that kind of stuff. An event was announced, but people are still upset there aren't more events. You know, there's a negative tint to every story. And finding the positive tint to every story is something that I'm trying to work a little bit on too, because that could be tough.
How much of that do you think is our social media environment? Like, do you think it's any of it's the algorithm? And I know, like, speaking of Tulare Community College and Prof, like, I know he's talked about how he does his year-end videos and he does, like, the worst of Magic and the best of Magic. And the worst of Magic is always a banger that tons of people watch. And the best of Magic, he's kind of, like, begging people to watch because it never does as well. Like,
YouTube 8 out of 10. Come on!
Yeah.
Yeah. I do think that is a major part of it. You know, I don't know if I could say I'm a journalist by training anymore because college was nearly a decade ago, but, you know, that was kind of one of the things they always, even I think in a world well before algorithmic content or whatever, you know, if it bleeds, it leads is a ancient newspaper adage for a reason. And the evolution to the, away from a more informative, you know, evening news being king or whatever to the 24/7 news cycle on cable television, you know, it's just like, I think we as people are probably predisposed to be much more attracted to negative things. And I think the social media environment is both a reflection of that and also further propagates that, you know?
Yeah, I can see that. I think I agree. Yeah,
Yeah.
It probably comes from both sides there. Yeah.
Yeah. Just like we're probably a little bit predisposed to it. Social media definitely does not help.
Yeah. Yeah.
But yeah, because like that's what gets engagement, and then because maybe people are arguing about it, maybe people are, you know, I think it is often easier to be quickly frustrated about something and espouse your frustration about something than to be quickly positive about something and espouse your positive, or you see something and you're like, wow, so right, I agree, and you don't feel so led to actually espouse that publicly, or, you know, whatever. And
Or like, I think in Magic too, we see this sometimes with like the people who aren't bothered by something are probably just like playing with their Magic cards that they got, and they're not bothering to complain about it. So like, I think like the Marvel Secret Lair drop sale from a couple months ago, where like everyone was so mad, but then when you think about it, and there were things legitimately that went super wrong with that.
It was
So I
a
don't want to
little
diminish
disaster,
that. Yeah.
but yeah.
It was like a legit disaster. But I think also like the people who had the bad experience are going to be complaining online, and the people who got their lair drop probably are not posting anything online because they got their lair drop. They're just checked out of the whole thing. Yeah, they're playing Wolverine. Yeah.
Yeah, no, I definitely agree with that. And I do think that's honestly specifically kind of in Magic, but the more I stretch out into other hobbies, we were talking about hobbies a little bit before we started. The hobbies that we have outside of Magic, for me, that's video game, even retro video game stuff, man. You could not believe in a hobby where nothing comes out anymore except for awesome new like hobbyist modding stuff. You would not believe how much people manage to find to complain about or whatever.
Oh, that's funny.
But I think it is because, like, yeah, if you're online, you know, when it comes to engaging with a hobby, your positive engagement is often just doing the thing, you know.
Right? Yeah, you're playing the game, or
if I'm sitting on my futon playing the GameCube, I'm having a fun time playing the GameCube. If I'm at, you know, a pre-release, if I'm at FNM, I'm having a fun time playing Magic, hopefully. And that does not lead for much time to tweet, wow, having such a good time. Well, I do that, but I'm mentally ill. That does not leave much space for many normal people to say, you know what I'm going to do? I'm going to pull out my phone and I'm going to tell everyone how much fun I'm having at FNM.
Yeah. Yeah, you're too busy doing the thing.
Yep, exactly. Do you get to do the thing a lot, Seth? I think that once a hobby becomes a job, as fun as it is, it's still a job. And I'm sure you technically play a lot of Magic the Gathering because, well, you have to record an Against the Odds League, and you have to brew a budget Magic deck for the week, and you have to figure out some zany new Commander Clash deck and all that kind of stuff. But how much does that stuff clock as work versus play? And then do you still get to go out and jam Modern if you want to, or whatever, in your day-to-day life? Is that something that you still get to interact with much?
I do. Not as much as before I was making content. I remember like being like, before I started making content, being in college on Christmas break, and I probably did 50 cube drafts or something. I just spent that whole break just cube after cube after cube.
Yeah.
I can't really do that anymore as easily as I used to be able to because I got other stuff going on. But still, yeah, like I'll still record my content and then just like jam a league for fun at night or something once I'm done doing stuff. So it's still there. Yeah.
That makes sense. It's good to keep the love alive.
Yeah, for sure. I've never played that much in paper, just because I live like in a super rural area in the middle of nowhere.
Right?
Yeah, so we sometimes have LGSs that like little clubhousey ones that'll pop up in like a small town around here, and they last for like a year or two, and then they go out of business. But I don't really have like a steady, close local game store to go to, so I don't play that much in paper outside of going to like cons and events and stuff.
And you don't get out to cons all that much, do you? I know you get out to you've been getting out to like the Magic cons often.
Yeah, I've been mostly going to the Magic cons. Yeah, so I go to 2 or 3 of the Magic cons once in a while. I do like an SCG thing, but I'm not a big traveler. I've never been. I've always enjoyed like doing the content in like that aspect of stuff. And it's hard to like travel for 4 or 5 days and like turn off the content brain of wanting to like be doing that aspect, even though I enjoy going to the events. So I like them when I get to do them, but I've never been someone who'd want to do it like every other week or every month, even just like event into event. I don't know. That's not my style. I wouldn't enjoy it that much.
No, I don't. It was for me for a period of a very short amount of time. And then I like sat back and I was like, man, I like playing poker with my friends on Friday nights. I like sitting at home. I like being home. I traveled for a week for Christmas and I got to see family and I got home and I was like, whew.
Yeah.
Nice to finally be in my own bed.
Glad to be back. Yeah. Did you ever do any of the like Pro Tour grind stuff? I never really got into that, like trying to do qualifiers or anything.
There was a relatively short period of time, like in my late high school time and a little bit like during the summers at college when I was home from college type of thing, when I had a group of friends, kind of like my first core Magic group, up in Grand Rapids, Michigan, when I did a little bit of that, because like that's what the people I became friends with did. You know, they played Modern on Thursday night and they played Standard on Monday and Friday night. Every time they're at the LGS and there's a PPTQ within a 3-hour driving distance. All right, we're going. You know, was kind of the thing. But and it's one of those things that I've always been interested by. I'm not a great Magic the Gathering player. I'm an okay Magic the Gathering player at best, which harms that goal for sure, but
that makes it harder. Yeah,
exactly. But these days I'm happy to chill out and think about Magic in a different way. There's probably there will probably be a time when, you know, if I, you know, when I go through my arc of I don't know, being a parent or something, which tends to, it seems many people disappear from Magic the Gathering content creation when they become a parent. I can see that in my future. And then I come back and I'm like, man, you know what I actually want to do? I want to grind Modern until the wheels fall off. And maybe I'll see if I can qualify for a Pro Tour or whatever, but
yeah,
not anytime soon.
Yeah, I've never really done that scene either. I've thought about it. It would be cool, but I'm just not much of a traveler. It would be fun to do with a group of friends, though. Like, I could see the college thing. Like, when I first started to play, so I learned in college, too, but the people I played with were, like, super casual. Like, we're just, like, playing, you know, at the apartment or whatever, get a bunch of people around and hang out. So, wasn't really grinding the PTQ scene, but yeah.
Yep. Yeah, that was, yeah, it's just like the people that I fell into, it was what they did, which I guess is, in a great many ways, the Magic the Gathering experience. As we all know, Seth, it's about the gathering. Except for those of us who don't like to travel and don't have LGSs near us. But, well, Seth, we've been going for about 35 minutes. Look at us. Look at us go. What's your favorite thing about making Magic the Gathering content, Seth?
I get to play a lot of Magic. Like I have just always loved playing Magic, and I still love playing Magic. And I guess the content part, it's nice that other people can appreciate the cool things. Like, that's my favorite part of making content, is like doing things different that no one else is doing and trying to make it happen and pull it off. And it's cool when you do it by yourself and you have that really cool play, but it's even more cool when you have the cool play that happens and, like, you know, thousands of people end up watching and they appreciate it too. So those are my favorite moments and aspects of making content.
Yeah, I guess we've we've beat around the bush a little bit. Well, I guess I explicitly said it earlier about how when a hobby becomes a job, it can make stuff a little tough. But I guess you're in a maybe not super unique spot, but kind of a unique spot where your interaction with Magic, past whatever drudgery your official job as content manager for Goldfish may come with.
Yeah, there's some boring stuff in there too.
I'm sure. I guess a lot of it does come down to, you get to think about brewing really cool decks and then you get to try to make zany stuff work on Magic the Gathering online while talking about it. And then you get to publish it.
It's great. Yeah. Like it's amazing. But yeah, that is a big chunk of what I would say, like, probably half of what I do is that aspect of stuff, is like the brewing the decks and playing the games, and like it's super fun. And then the other half, you got some more boring stuff, the editing and behind the scenes stuff, like the content manager stuff, which I don't mind, but definitely not as fun as like brewing a cool deck and, you know, winning a game with it.
Yeah. You get to approach Crim and say, "My dearest Crimothy."
Dear old Crim.
I really need this from you this week.
Really, we're pretty independent with how we do things at Goldfish. Yep. So for the most part, we try to communicate a little bit about what we're doing, just so we don't like double up when a hot new deck comes out. If like Crim's thinking about playing it, I'm thinking about playing it. Like we try to communicate on that, but really, everyone's pretty independent for the most part with their content and kind of like does their own thing.
Mm-hmm. That makes sense. Well, Seth, I have one more question for you.
Yes.
And then I have one more question for you. That'll just be for the horn section on patreon.com. But Seth, one more final question. Is the pronunciation thing a bit?
Mostly no. Okay, the pronunciation thing. So I actually do. I don't know if I'm like a little dyslexic or something, maybe. Like, I've never been diagnosed or went to a doctor for it, but so I think I legitimately mispronounce a lot of things. And I've talked about this before. I also like kind of had a unique childhood where I grew up. We didn't have television. My parents didn't live in television, so I didn't have any TV in my house growing up. So instead of learning words by watching TV, I read a ton of books. So I a lot of times pronounce things the way that, I don't know, I read them or read them, even though it's incorrectly. So I legitimately mispronounce a lot of things, but then it kind of became a meme. And now I definitely like lead into it sometimes too, because it's kind of funny. So it started off as an organic thing, and now I think it's kind of a meme. So I try to have fun with it.
It's kind of a fun thing. Well, I guess at one point, at some point, it's very easy to accidentally mispronounce something. And then, that's just his name now.
Yeah. Then you just go with it. Yeah. You might as well. I think it's easier just to have fun with it. That's with the internet and all that stuff, like with stuff like that, if it's not anything that's like serious or harmful, I think the best way to handle is just try to have fun with it. Like, you could get all bent out of shape and be like, oh my god, like, you're criticizing me, or I'm not actually that bad of a pronouncer. I don't know, I'm doing it right now. But
oh no, he's doing it.
It's easier just to roll with it and have fun with it.
Sure. Sweetwater Cliffs has been a part of my vocabulary for, I guess, nearly a decade now. So
yeah,
you did it. For whatever reason, that was the one that stuck with me all this time.
That one stuck.
Sweetwater Cliffs.
Oh,
Donovan Bain.
Donovan Bain, yeah. Classics.
So, Seth, in 2025, the final question for all of my interviewees will be, I would love to hear about what your favorite hobby is outside of Magic the Gathering and why. But that is going to be for the Horn section, our wonderful supporters over on Patreon. Seth, thank you for joining me here today on this episode of the Herald's Horn.
Hey, you're welcome. Thanks for having me. It's been super fun to chat.
Yippee! Bye-bye! Thank you so much for listening. If you have feedback, would like to sponsor us, or would like to submit something to the Letters to the Editor segment, email me at editorial@heraldshorn.com. The show is hosted, produced, and edited by me, Cal Jones. The rest of the team is, of course, our co-hosts, Emma Partlow, Dan, better known as Moderately Anonymous MTG, and Lexi, better known as Black Girl Mage. We're having so much fun making this show. I hope you're enjoying listening to it. We'll see you next week.
Just for fun, all three of us should right now try to scat the theme song.
You are doing it, Dan.
I know, I'm laughing too hard. You guys really got me. That was good. That was so much better than I was expecting it to be honest. Because actually, I feel like you don't know what it is, because I don't know what it is off the top of my head. You just started doing a thing.
I know you don't know what the theme is.
No.
You don't listen to this shit.
Well, I could tell from the things that you were scatting that you didn't know what it was.
Yeah,
You just jumped right in, and it was perfect. It was
adding
great.
flair. I was adding interest.
Like, that's just good improv. That was good. You did a great job. That's what I'm trying to get down to.
And Dan, what's your part sound like?
Well, I was here was my idea, is that I was going to see which parts you both picked up, and then I would like add in whatever instrument from there. But also, I canonically cannot remember what our theme song sounds like. So when you both started doing it, I was like, I don't know if there's another part.
You might have free range. You can honestly pick anything.
I should have done a solo over the top. You're right.
Well, don't worry. Theoretically, this theme song is not much longer for the world.
Brandon Sanderson, if you're listening, please rate the show 5 stars and send a letter to the editor.